Transformers. We've all seen or interacted with them in some way, most likely through watching the Michael Bay movies, and despite those films and their hiccups, they remain incredibly popular to this day. Of course, with any popular franchise comes video games, but due to the swift decline of popularity in the toys in the 80s and 90s, it managed to avoid much crossover with the gaming sphere. Sure, there was Convoy No Nazo or whatever, but until the series' revitalisation in the 2000s, if you were playing a video game, it probably wasn't Transformers related. With the success of the Cybertron trilogy, Transformers began to pick up some serious steam, and when the G.I. Joe movie got pushed back in the favour of our Cybertronian friends, the IP was completely reborn. There were Transformers up the ass. There were certainly Transformers video games up the ass too. Most, if not all, these games were based on cartoons or hugely successful movies, but in 2010 we get hit with a game not adapting on any pre-existing Transformers content, but instead an original story telling the typically glossed over Cybertronian war. Aptly named War for Cybertron, the game released on the Xbox 360 and PS3 and ended up being a pretty big success. The graphics were great, the characters and story had depth, and although it took itself seriously, it wasn't afraid of making things look like the old cartoons. That game is not what we're talking about though. We're going to be talking about the Nintendo DS release. Back then, you hadn't made it if your game didn't have a scuffed DS port. Well, not all the ports were scuffed. Toy Story 3 was good, as were the games released to coincide with the first Transformers movie. Revenge of the Fallen, however, wasn't quite as lucky. Thus, when it came to War for Cybertron, it was a complete toss-up. So how does it fare? Somehow they managed to cram a ridiculous amount of content into this, and I would know, because I went and 100%ed it a few years ago. Like the other Transformers games on DS, both Autobot and Decepticon versions of the game were released, each with different missions and characters following both sides in the war. I'll be covering both versions, starting with the Autobot. Other than the campaign, most of what I'll talk about carries over between both versions, so find that missing stylus, snap the hinge, and ignore the dead pixels, as we take a look at Transformers War for Cybertron in the DS. Our game starts and we get a bit crunched cutscene of Optimus, not Prime, explaining the Cybertronian war. Then we immediately get thrown into our tutorial. Starting the game off, you get to play as a new Autobot recruit. Not sure why he's rocking up this late into the battle, but hey ho. Anyway, after a brief bit of training, you get to head out on a mission to destroy some power cells. But after an attack from Starscream, we switch to the perspective of Optimus, and our game starts proper. Basically, the Autobots are fucked, and so is Cybertron. The Decepticons have kidnapped Zeta Prime and decided to infect Cybertron's core with Dark Energon, a dangerous form of Energon that, although giving a boost in strength, can kill or drive a user insane. The poisoning to the core begins to slowly kill it and anyone who dares live on the planet. The Autobots devise a plan to remove the Dark Energon infusers and let the core heal itself, but their resources are spread thin since they also have to rescue their leader Zeta Prime. Despite great efforts on both fronts, destroying the infusers and breaking into the Decepticons' K-On prison, the core is still dying, and Zeta Prime is beyond saving. With no leader, the Autobots appoint Optimus as the new Prime, and he unites them in one last strike against the Decepticons, an all-out assault on Trypticon Station, a space station that functions as a Dark Energon factory and has a steady stream flowing into Cybertron's core. If they can destroy Trypticon, it'll allow Cybertron to heal itself, although it won't be habitable for millennia. The Autobots plan to leave on arcs and return someday to their home. Optimus' plan works, and Trypticon Station falls, but the power of Trypticon Station wasn't in its Dark Energon production, but in the destructive power of its seemingly unstoppable alt mode. After a hard-fought battle, the Autobots destroy Trypticon, and perhaps secure a future for their race. Holy shit, this game is fucking cool. The story strays slightly from the console counterpart, but it's a mostly faithful rendition with all the major set pieces included. And that's what this game does best, is letting you do cool things in cool places. You might notice I didn't mention really any characters beyond Optimus and Zeta Prime, and that's because there really aren't many. Mainly because one of the mechanics of the game is selecting your own characters, and that's characters plural. You get to take 2 for each level. Yeah, other than this tutorial, you get to play as anyone you want, There's a decent selection, so it's pretty likely your favourites here, unless you like Sunstreaker, but then you probably don't deserve human rights. All the characters fit into one of three categories: light, medium, or heavy. These classes deem their abilities and what stats you can level up. Level up? Yeah, I hear you, but we'll get there when we get there. Most characters from each class play the same, kinda. See, on top of the character types, there are also 3 types of damage you can deal in-game. I can't remember their names, probably just light, medium and heavy, but we'll just call them by their shapes: triangle, square and circle. Every character is able to do 2 kinds of damage, one from their melee and one from their gun, meaning you do need to get tactical on occasion, and pick characters so that you have every form of damage covered. You might be asking now, what are these damage things about? Well, every enemy is particularly susceptible to a certain form of damage more than others. It boils down to hit the yellow tank with the yellow blast and blue plane with the blue blast. Simple really. And to the fact that you can hot swap between characters by hitting A. This deepens combat a little, while factoring in the limits of the DS. I mean, it was this or have touchscreen minigames for extra damage, and I know what I prefer. Speaking of which, this is one of those godly licensed games that doesn't use the touchscreen badly. In fact, it hardly uses it at all. Its only purpose is to transform you into your alt mode. Looping back to combat, when you're in your alt mode, you blast out all 3 kinds of damage at once, making it kinda overpowered. To balance it out a little, they made it so flying characters can't regenerate their energy when they're transformed. It means you can't camp in the air and kill everybody. Damn developers. So that's combat. Repetitive but wholly acceptable for a DS entry. I'm not sure who or for why, but someone in development said, "This is great, but where's my RPG mechanics?" Inexplicably, characters earn XP and level up, giving you skill points to improve their stats. I don't know, I'm not complaining, it's odd that you put it in the first place. I do like having the ability to turn Swoop into the ultimate weapon, and the game is actually very kind, automatically levelling up new characters you unlock so they won't be left behind in terms of power. And well, that's a very important thing, because this game can get straight up evil. I mean, you play the first level and go, this is kinda easy, and suddenly boom, level restarting goop and 2-hit dual wielding Decepticons. Oh, and don't forget these. To anyone who's ever played any Transformers game on DS, these grenades. Where were we? Yeah, these turrets will catch you in a damage loop, so you need those regen and endurance stats up. Luckily on my playthrough, I thought ahead and grinded a couple of levels with the swarms. I think one of the things I like about this game is that it takes you through some brilliant scenarios. A prison break, a battle on a Cyber City rooftop, a kaiju fight. Although it's limited mostly to set dressing, it helps to make the game feel less like a linear brawler, and more like the desperate push of a fading rebellion that is in the story. A lot of what I'm saying of course applies to the console version of the game as well. One of the things that these games did that I'll eternally praise them for is the art. Just look at these drawings. I honestly think, as a whole, these are on par with G1 in terms of quality, because they take those colourful 80s designs and they make them more gritty, and since it's all on Cybertron, sci-fi. But unlike the sci-fi and gritty designs of the Bay films, they don't get embarrassed by the source material, they keep both the colours and the shapes. Also, real quick, I love the Bayformers designs before anyone crucifies me. One aspect of the designs I really appreciate is the glowing sections. I think every character has at least a few spots on their bodies that ambiently glow in gameplay. I think that's just cool. It's something you might not expect them to keep on the DS due to how weak it is, but the inclusion helps to make the characters feel more alive, I think. They don't feel as much like toys as they do in other games. The game also uses some gorgeous character sprites in the menus. Brown and Silver Optimus kinda goes hard, and the art they use for the levels, this shit is some of the coolest Transformers stuff ever. All the while in the game, as you get to look at the brilliant art, you get to listen to some incredible sound design. From the blasts, to the hammers, to the music and the voice cast and everything. Everything here sounds just brilliant. I know, I've glazed it enough. Psych, I have more to praise. Look at how many data discs there are to unlock. 30 arena missions that unlock Grimlock, and 4 bonus missions from the Decepticons version. And multiplayer modes with a bot capturing mechanic where you get an extra prison break mission. It's safe to say the game passes on the replay value test if nothing else. But there are issues, like the lack of checkpoints. You'd be lucky if you die at the end and get sent back as far as the middle. The bosses suck a lot of the time too. Mostly you're better hanging around in your alt mode and hitting them with your super blast. The Triptychon station boss is maybe one of the worst things I've ever experienced on a DS. Oh, and lastly, the controls can get sort of awkward, because up and down in the D-pad make you move forward and back, but left and right move the camera, so trying to figure out where you are or trying to turn and face an enemy is pretty hard. Other than those, I don't have a huge amount of issues with this game. It's honestly really good, and if you have a DS and an R4, load it up. I mean, purchase it legally and play it on official hardware without any alterations. No, but seriously, if you like Transformers or DS games or both, play it. So what about Decepticons? Transformers War for Cybertron Decepticons is the sister title to War for Cybertron Autobots. It acts as a prequel to the events of the Autobots game, showing how the Decepticons captured Zeta Prime and how they infected Cybertron's core with Dark Energon. A lot of the game is the same or very similar to the Autobots version, so I'll only be going over the differences, the main one being the story. The game shares the same opening level as the Autobots version, save for the Autobot you play is getting murked by Megatron. But this begs the question, if this game's a prequel, does that mean this exact sequence of events happened to two separate Autobot rookies? Are they alternate intersecting timelines? Makes you think. Anyway, we follow the Decepticons as they seek to revive the Dark Energon project and give themselves the edge and strength over the Autobots. To do so, they take Tripticon Station by force, begrudgingly hiring the station's keeper, Starscream. After infusing all their troops though, the station's supply of Dark Energon runs low, so Starscream suggests reactivating the uplink from Cybertron, supplying Energon to the station that can then be processed and pumped back down to Cybertron's core. The plan succeeds, but only to a limited degree, with a fraction of the projected energy being transferred. Megatron begins to doubt Starscream's commitment to the Decepticon cause, but Starscream buys his way out of execution by suggesting a mission into the Autobot archives. There, the Omega Key could be found, allowing them to fully engage the uplink and create a steady stream of Dark Energon. Megatron leads a strike team into the archives, but is halted by the Autobot leader Zeta Prime. After an intense battle, Megatron gravely injures Zeta Prime and gets his hand on the Omega Key. Zeta Prime laughs as the truth is unveiled. The real Omega Key wasn't the object in Megatron's hands, but instead Omega Supreme. After rounding up their strongest, the Decepticons manage to overpower Omega Supreme, putting them one step closer to planetary dominance. Well, once more, a simplified rendition of the story from the console game, and again, it slaps. The game plays pretty identically to the Autobots, but it feels a lot more like you're in control, like you're stronger, and they manage to do that through vibes alone. Well, I say that, but only the first half of the game. In the second, the difficulty curve ramps way up. I have no idea why, but the devs just get plain malicious with some of these enemy placements. Honestly, the only thing that saved me was that I put a shit ton of skill points into Starscream's firepaw. Just look at him go. Yeah, that's the thing that separates this game from Autobots, is that while both games have a good first half, the Autobots' second half is good too, while this game just becomes unplayable. The section where you have to chase Cliffjumper and Jetfire is infuriating. Just look at how much damage they do with a single hit. And on top of that, there's the Omega Supreme fight. I came into this one with memories of my failures on DS hardware years ago, but after beating Tripticons so easily in Autobots, I thought this might be a breeze. It sucks. His attacks are near undodgeable, and he so often catches you in damage loops. I don't want to make it sound like I hate this version. It's really cool. I mean, look at this section hopping on asteroids, or the K-On! Prison face, or actually seeing Zeta Prime. The character roster is stacked like the Autobots one. I just think the levels could have been designed better. Yeah, I'm afraid that's all I have. So, thanks for getting this far. Hit the buttons, and goodbye.